Is Post Holdings bailing out its former wholly owned active nutrition brand portfolio? As I normally do with the Bellring Brands quarterly update videos, I will be utilizing the earnings report, the earnings conference call, and any associated publicly disclosed news sources to obviously update you on the brand portfolio that is Bellring Brands. But more importantly, kind of pull this back and give you strategic insights and commentary around the active nutrition, convenient nutrition sections like the liquid RTD category, bar category, and powders category. Now, let's just kind of dive into the top line financial information. Bellring Brands does have a fiscal year end, so they are actually in their quarter four, and they had net sales of $348 million. That was up 20.3% year over year, but was down just under 1% on a quarter over quarter sequential basis. Now let's kind of dive a little bit deeper into each particular brand. Premier Protein is the most important because it makes up the vast majority of the Bellring Brands total sales. The Premier Protein brand had net sales that were up 18.2% year over year this quarter. Volumes were up 13.6% year over year. If we just isolate the protein RTDs for Premier Protein, that category saw growth of 18.5% and associated volume growth of 13.6%. Also want to talk about Dymatize Nutrition. This has really been a huge shining light for Bellring Brands throughout their fiscal 2021. They had net sales this quarter that were up 41.3%. Volumes were also up at 32.4%. And those numbers maybe are a little bit bloated, mostly because of the COVID-19 effect. You're lapping that where you had specialty retailers and gyms that were maybe not deemed necessary or essential. There's also a collection of other brands. It's mostly Powerbar at this point. And that collection of brands had net sales that were up 7.6% year over year. Since this is the fiscal year end for Bellring Brands, just want to update you or maybe remind you on how well they did throughout fiscal 2021. The portfolio as a whole had net sales that reached $1.25 billion. That was up 26.2% year over year. Drilling this down into the specific brands, Premier Protein had sales increase 25.1%. Volumes were up 23.9%. Dymatize had net sales that increased 43.3%, with volumes up 29.3%. And then the collection of other brands were up 6.9% year over year. Taking this a step further, if we look at the sales by brand, as I mentioned, Premier Protein is the vast majority of the total revenue for Bellring Brands. It makes up 83%. Dymatize makes up 13%, and then the other brands make up 4%. Sales by product, Protein RTDs, coming mostly from Premier Protein, make up 81% of the total revenue. Powders make up 14%, and then nutritional bars and then all other formats make up 5%. Sales by channel, club makes up 55%, food, drug, mass makes up 25%, e-commerce is 11%, specialty is 8%, and all other channels make up 1%. Bellring Brands is mostly a U.S. revenue generating organization at 88% of total revenue coming from the US, 12% coming from international. And since Premier Protein's RTD shakes do make up the vast majority of Bellring Brands' total revenue as a whole, I want to dive a little bit deeper into that category of convenient nutrition. The RTD liquids category of convenient nutrition has shown extremely strong growth throughout the COVID period and is trending well above historical growth rates. This has helped Premier Protein see strong growth across all major tracked channels, including grocery, which is up 40%, mass, which was up 46%, club, which is up 28%, and then drug or pharmacy is up 65%. Digital sales have also done extremely well, though there is decelerating growth quarter over quarter at 14% e-commerce growth. This is mostly coming because people are shopping more in store. And then over the last 52 weeks, e-commerce has grown for the Premier Protein RTDs 47% year over year. Shifting to consumption trends for the protein RTDs with Premier Protein, they did see quarterly consumption gains of 30% year over year. This is the third quarter in a row that consumption has outpaced shipments, which is now causing out-of-stock issues. These out-of-stock issues show up in a quarter-over-quarter decline in total distribution points. The reason you aren't seeing growth materially slow down is that velocities at the remaining in-stock total distribution points are up 17% quarter-over-quarter. Premier Protein has a household penetration of 8.4%. That is an increase of 20% year over year. The brand continues to have strong upside as the household penetration for RTD liquids category of convenient nutrition is only at 26%. That's compared to the overall convenient nutrition category being at 51%. And Premier Protein market share has also continued to grow, reaching 20.2% of the total RTD liquids category of convenient nutrition. And while Bellring Brands is a billion-dollar functional CPG portfolio, why have they still been able to grow so quickly off of such a large base of revenue? I believe there's four main reasons. The first one is something I mentioned earlier, but the liquid RTDs category of convenient nutrition has seen quarterly and last 52-week growth rates that are about 3 to 4 times the historical average of 5 to 6% compounded annual growth rate. Secondly, shoppers are trying to consume more nutritious products and improve their overall health. The COVID-19 effect did create a lot of sedentary activity with consumers that they now are trying to kind of reverse out of. And while I don't think Premier Protein is really associated with the typical weight management kind of trends, I do think they are seeing a positive benefit to maybe some people that are looking to utilize the products in that way. But I do think they're more associated with consumers that are thinking themselves as less reactive recipients of healthcare to more proactive health and wellness solutions. Thirdly, Premier Protein also was able to pass on a significant price increase and still saw large volume increases. So that increase in price was pretty inelastic for them. And then finally, Dymatize Nutrition has outperformed even anybody's kind of expectations. They saw a ton of growth because the market is really thinking about powders in a more mainstream way. And as Dymatize Nutrition has shifted strategically their product portfolio, their sales channel strategy, they've been able to catch a lot of really strong tailwinds, which has allowed them to pick up a ton of incremental additional total distribution points, especially within the grocery channel. The company is also benefiting from licensed partners with Pebbles and now Dunkin' Coffee. Now, on the flip side, why is Bellring Brands maybe not growing as fast as they maybe could? And a lot of this comes down to the problems that are happening in the supply side. We talk about margin softness going on. This is usually where a lot of the problems kind of come up with maybe less capitalized businesses. If they don't have strong profitability, they're not able to reinvest into growth initiatives. But I don't think this is really the problem, or at least the key problem that's happening at Bellring Brands right now. They are seeing margin softness. This quarter, their gross margins were down 360 basis points year over year to 28.2% year over year. This is a large promotional calendar quarter, so they did have that. They already anticipated that, and also higher transportation costs, logistical costs, and higher milk-based protein input costs. Want to dive a little bit further into the milk protein or just whey protein markets. The expectation for Bellring Brands coming into this fiscal year was that the first half of the year was going to have elevated prices on these inputs, but the second half of the year was going to kind of settle off. Now, that's not the case. The first and second half reality was that prices stayed extremely high, and they're going to stay high into 2022. This is going to materially impact the margin, especially when we're talking about the first half of 2022, because they're going to have like almost a 2x protein cost coming from their powders, and where they're seeing double-digit inflationary costs increases, I think single digits on the milk protein side with the RTD, so seeing that a little bit less. All of this is going to create some year-over-year comparative like margin issues, so that should be expected in the first half of 2022. So to offset, Bellring Brands is probably going to have to do another price increase in the first half of 2022. I do think they're going to do that on the powder side, but they might also need to do that on the liquid RTD side with Premier Protein. And Bellring Brands believes that the inflationary cost pressures for the inputs of milk-based proteins is going to be transitory. I tend to believe it's going to be transitory long-term. I don't think it's ever going to go back to the pre-pandemic levels, so it's going to have an elevated price. I think more value-added milk-based kind of products from these manufacturers will come online over the next couple of years. So we'll kind of neutralize some of the increased demand. But the next probably 6 to 12 months are going to be quite ugly, in my opinion. Secondly, and what has the most impact on why Bellring Brands maybe not growing as quick as they could, is that they have supply constraints. The good news is that Bellring Brands has more capacity than they've ever had. They have more diversification of their contract manufacturing network than they've ever had. So they're in a really good place. They also have dealt with this before, supply constraints in 2018, 2019. There was kind of a ton of issues that happened in that kind of time frame. They had to go down to their two best sellers of, I think, just vanilla and chocolate. They're not going to need to get to that level. I think they are going to cut, at least temporarily, the 4 slowest moving SKUs on the 30-gram Tetra Pak version of the Premier Protein RTDs. And they'll also utilize like cutting back some of their promotion activity and things like that just to slow up the velocity as best as possible. They'll work with some of their biggest accounts, specifically Costco on the Premier Protein side, to make sure that they are buying strategically and make sure that everything is going to be in stock the best that they can during this kind of challenging period. The bad news is that there is limitations on labor. There's limitation on the Tetra Pak actual packaging, are adding to the issues around the outsized demand that Premier Protein has had. That has basically wiped out all their safety stock, has kept them on a year-end kind of inventories that are extremely low right now. That is going to cause some extended stock out periods for likely the next several quarters. But Bellring Brands does have a 5-year plan. I think it's probably like a 3-prong approach that they'll take. First is that they're going to try to add capacity to their existing contract manufacturers. They did have a ton of equipment on order to add capacity. Some of that didn't come in 2021, so that'll be added into 2022. They'll end up getting a boost there. They'll also acquire more line time at some of these contract manufacturers. Secondly, they're going to look at adding additional contract manufacturers over the next 5 years. They have 5 of them right now. They will look to add 3 to 5 more over the next 5 years. And then finally, what I mentioned in the introduction, Big Brother, aka Post Holdings, is going to help them a little bit here by investing in a new facility. So they're going to actually buy land. They're going to develop a contract manufacturer for these liquid RTDs for Premier Protein. They'll create some type of contract manufacturing agreement, but this will be a dedicated facility, I believe a dedicated facility for Premier Protein. This is not unlike their 5th facility that they have on the contract manufacturing side, where they do have a dedicated facility. So these dedicated facilities have a lot more control to them. So they're actually able to increase and handle a lot of variations much quicker. This is going to be a really good thing for Bellring Brands, specifically Premier Protein, as they see a huge uplift in sales over the next 5 years. And they need to kind of get ready for that. They need to do anything possible to add supply to the market, because this specific type of package size for the liquid RTDs with the aseptic liquid processing facility, there's not much of that available in the market right now. So they need to add capacity by doing it themselves. This is not going to kind of take over the entirety of the Bellring Brands supply needs. This Post Holdings facility will help a ton, but Bellring Brands is going to continue to do an asset-light business model. They're going to continue to look for flexibility and diversification in their manufacturing strategy across a bunch of varied locations. But I hope you enjoyed this video on Bellring Brands. If you did, please hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. Also, if you are in the giving spirit right now, please consider hitting the subscribe button. I have a goal of hitting 2,000 subscribers very soon. You could be a part of that. I would love if you were a part of this journey with me. 4/5 of you that do watch my videos religiously that are not subscribers, you make me sad. Please change that. But just want to thank you for watching this particular video, and I'll see you on the next one.